I never thought I'd be the guy typing one of these out, but I've been sitting in this empty kitchen for 3 hours, watching the sun set over the Cascades. The silence is finally heavy enough to break me. They say grief is a hole, but betrayal is a wildfire. It doesn't just leave a void. It actively consumes everything you thought was solid until you're standing on ash. My name is Elias. I'm 36. 6 months ago, I was convinced I was the luckiest man in Seattle. I had a wife I adored, a business partner I trusted like a brother, and a custom-built home that felt like a fortress. Today, I have the house, but the walls feel different when you know what happened behind them. Sarah and I met in grad school. She was brilliant. A sharp-witted architectural consultant. She could spot a structural flaw from 50 paces. My best friend Marcus had been in my life since college. We were a tripod. When I started my landscaping and urban design firm, Marcus was my first hire. He was the CFO. He had the MBA. I had the vision. For a decade, we grew that company. From a 2-man operation in a garage to a firm handling multi-million-dollar contracts for tech campuses. Sarah was my rock through the lean years. Marcus was the guy who stayed up until 3 a.m. with me, over spreadsheets and takeout. I loved them. I would have died for either of them. The unraveling started with small, inexplicable glitches. A vendor payment would bounce, Marcus would blame a bank merger. A client would complain about a double bill. Marcus would chalk it up to a new software integration. I was too busy in the field to look closer. Around the same time, Sarah started pulling away. She blamed it on a grueling project in Bellevue. Staying late, coming home exhausted, smelling of expensive gin and a perfume I hadn't bought her. When I'd ask her about it, she'd look at me with pity, a cold expression. She told me I was being suffocating or anxious. She'd say, "Elias, I'm exhausted from carrying the mental load of this marriage. While you're playing in the dirt. Just let me breathe." That's the gaslighting part. You start to doubt your own eyes. You see a shadow in the hallway, but you convince yourself it's just the light. I felt like I was losing my mind. I started seeing a therapist, thinking I was the problem. I was depressed. I was paranoid. I was unstable. That was the word Sarah started using with our friends. She'd sigh at dinner parties when I'd mention being tired, giving a look to the table that said, "He's having another episode." And Marcus? He'd just clap me on the shoulder. "Take a week off, buddy. I've got the books. You just focus on getting your head right." The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October. I came home early from a site visit in Tacoma. The rain was too heavy to pour concrete. The house was quiet, but Sarah's car was in the driveway. I walked upstairs thinking she might be sick. I heard them before I saw them. It wasn't a movie moment. There was no screaming. It was the sound of laughter. Marcus and Sarah were in our bed, our $8,000 Italian linen sheets, looking over a stack of documents. They weren't just sleeping together. They were working. I stood in the doorway for a full minute before they noticed me. Marcus didn't even look ashamed. He looked annoyed. "Elias," he said, sitting up and adjusting his glasses. "You weren't supposed to be back until 5. Since you're here, we might as well do this now." Sarah didn't even cover herself. She just looked at me with a flat, dead stare. "We're filing for divorce, Elias. And Marcus has the buyout papers ready for the firm. You've been unstable for a year. We have the medical records from your therapist, the logs of your erratic behavior at the office, and the financial trail of the mistakes you've been making. If you fight us, we'll take you for everything and leave you in a psych ward. If you sign, you get a clean break and enough to live in a condo for a few years." They had been planning this for 18 months. Marcus had been slowly embezzling from the firm. But he wasn't just stealing. He was routing the discrepancies to look like they were my personal draws. Sarah had been coaching me into a mental health crisis. To ensure I'd be deemed an unfit partner in any legal battle, they wanted the company I built, the house I designed, and the reputation I'd spent 15 years cultivating. I didn't scream. I didn't swing. I just felt this profound, icy clarity. I walked out of the room, picked up my keys, and drove to a motel. I spent 3 days in a fog of pure, distilled rage. But then, the architect in me took over. You don't fix a crumbling foundation by hitting it with a sledgehammer. You study the blueprints and find the one load-bearing pillar that brings the whole structure down. I knew Marcus. He was smart, but he was arrogant. He thought he was the smartest person in any room because I'd let him believe it for a decade. And Sarah? Sarah loved luxury more than she loved people. They were greedy. And greed is a predictable variable. I didn't sign the papers. Instead, I called a lawyer I knew from my early days, a pit bull named Miller. He specialized in forensic accounting and corporate fraud. I told him everything. I don't want a settlement, I told him. I want them to destroy themselves. Miller smiled. It was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. Then we don't sue yet, he said. We play the part they wrote for you. For the next 4 months, I played the broken man. I signed a temporary management agreement, giving Marcus full control of the firm while I recovered. I moved into a shitty apartment. I let my beard grow out. I sent Sarah rambling, pathetic emails about how much I missed her. Emails I knew she was saving to use against me. Meanwhile, Miller and a team of forensic accountants were digging. We found the offshore account Marcus had set up, but more importantly, we found the ghost vendors. Marcus had been billing the firm for high-end materials from a company called Northwest Slate and Stone. The thing is, Northwest Slate didn't exist. It was a shell company registered to Sarah's maiden name. They thought they were being clever, but they'd committed the cardinal sin of white-collar crime. They got comfortable. They started using the embezzled money to fund their new life together, before they'd even officially gotten rid of me. They bought a vacation property in Cabo. They started making down payments on a second office in Portland. And they were doing it all using the firm's credit lines, which were still technically in my name. As the primary guarantor, I waited. I waited until they were deep into a massive contract. A $12 million project for a new tech headquarters. It required an immense amount of upfront capital for materials and bonding. I knew Marcus would be stretched thin. He'd moved all our liquid assets into the Northwest Slate shell to pay for the Cabo house, intending to repay it when the first milestone payment hit. The week before that payment was due, I struck. I didn't go to the police first. I went to the insurance company. I filed a formal suspicion of internal fraud report, backed by Miller's 400 pages of evidence, under the terms of our corporate insurance. An active fraud investigation triggers an immediate freeze on all corporate accounts to protect the assets. Suddenly, Marcus went to pay the subcontractors and the material suppliers for the tech campus. His cards were declined. The accounts were locked. He couldn't access a dime. He panicked. He tried to move money back from the shell account, but I'd already filed a parallel civil injunction against Sarah, freezing her assets as part of the divorce proceedings. The house of cards didn't just fall. It imploded. Within 48 hours, the subcontractors walked off the job site. The tech giant saw a stalled project and a fraud investigation. They invoked the morality and stability clause. They didn't just fire us. They sued for breach of contract and moved to seize the performance bond. Marcus called me, screaming, "What have you done? You're destroying the company. You're losing everything too." "No, Marcus," I said. My voice was as calm as a frozen lake. "I'm losing a company that's already hollow. You're losing your freedom." The beauty of their plan was that they had documented my instability so well. I used that. I went to the DA. I explained that I had been emotionally compromised and manipulated by my CFO and my wife, who were conspiring to defraud the firm. I turned over every email, every text, and every fraudulent invoice because I was the one who reported it, and because Marcus was the one signing the checks, and Sarah was the one receiving the funds. The state saw me as the victim of a sophisticated long con. The fallout was cinematic. The IRS got involved because of the shell company. The Department of Labor got involved. Marcus had stopped paying the employees' health insurance just to cover his own debts. Sarah's consulting career ended overnight. When the fraud charges hit the Seattle Times, nobody wants an architect who steals from her own husband. The divorce was finalized in February. Because of the fraudulent concealment of assets, the judge didn't just give me the house. He gave me Sarah's entire share of our joint investments. As restitution, she walked out of the courtroom with nothing but a suitcase and a mountain of legal fees. Marcus fared worse. He's currently serving 4 to 6 years in a minimum security facility for corporate embezzlement and tax evasion. He tried to flip on Sarah. She tried to flip on him. In the end, they destroyed the only thing they had left, their love. Last week, I walked through the house we used to share. It was empty. The Italian linens were gone. The expensive gin was gone. I sat on the floor of the living room and watched the rain against the glass. I'm not happy. You don't get happy after something like this. You just get quiet. I've started a new firm, smaller this time. Just me and a few trusted designers. No CFOs, no partners. I saw Sarah a few days ago. She was working behind the counter at a high-end grocery store, 2 hours away. She looked older. Her hair was thin. That sharp, arrogant light in her eyes was gone, replaced by a weary, flickering desperation. She saw me. For a second, I thought she'd scream, but she just looked down and started scanning a stranger's lemons. I didn't feel a surge of joy. I didn't feel the need to gloat. I just felt a profound sense of balance. They tried to build a life on the ruins of mine, forgetting that I'm the one who knows how to build things to last. They were just the scaffolding, temporary, ugly, and ultimately meant to be torn down once the real structure was finished. I walked out of the store into the cool Washington air, got into my car, and drove home to the house they tried to steal. Finally, comfortable in the silence. Would you like me to write a follow-up story from the perspective of a private investigator who helped gather the evidence against them?